Hello, everyone. Tonight we're stepping back through time, not just a little, but all the way to the churning coasts of 17th century Denmark. You're not a noble, not a merchant, and definitely not a pirate. No, tonight you're something more isolated, more essential. You're a lighthouse keeper on a jagged edge of coast where the North Sea never whispers, it howls. The salt in the air scratches your throat before your eyes even open. It's still dark out, but you already feel the chill creeping in through the cracks in the stone wall. The waves outside boom like distant cannon fire, rhythmic and menacing. You pull the threadbare blanket tighter, but it's useless. The mattress is straw-stuffed, and last week it was home to 3 spiders and a worm with ambition. Sleep, sure, but not comfortably. You're responsible for lives. That tower you sleep beneath it holds a light that sailors pray for in storm and fog. If that light goes out, ships can and do smash into the crags below like porcelain mugs off a tavern shelf. And, let's be honest, one missed lighting, and you probably won't survive this either from guilt or because a very angry sea captain's cousin lives nearby. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there down in the comments. I love seeing who's up with me this late. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You roll over and squint at the small cracked window. The glass is frosted with salt. It never really gets clean. The wind outside keens through the mortar joints a familiar sound, almost like an old friend who won't stop complaining. Your bones ache a little, not from age, but from the constant damp and the sheer physical toll of keeping that tower lit. You're not alone in the world technically. Somewhere 5 miles down a winding goat track of a road, there's a village. They send up food sometimes, tools, messages. But here, right now, it's you, the stone walls and the sea. You light a stubby beeswax candle from the coals you banked the night before. It flares with a satisfying pop and throws just enough light to catch the outline of your boots stiff with yesterday's spray. You pull on your woolen overshirt, itchy smells like old fish, and swing your legs over the side of the bed. The floor is cold stone. Always is. You think about carving some wooden slats for warmth, but that's a next month task. Or maybe never. You trudge to the corner where last night's bread sits under a cloth. Black rye hard enough to bludgeon a thief with. Still edible technically. You chew. It's dry. Very dry. There's pickled herring too sealed in an earthen jar that smells like bad decisions. You eat it anyway. There's no fire going yet. You're saving the wood. Driftwood and bramble bundles only come every other week, and you burned through a lot last night drying your coat. You'll get a fire going later, maybe. You glance at your tiny wooden clock. Not accurate, not consistent, but ticking. You set it against the sun whenever there is sun, and hope it doesn't lie to you too much. Historians still argue whether these early timepieces were more decorative than useful, but hey, it gives you something to shout at. Your morning routine's all muscle memory. You gulp the last of the brackish water from your rain barrel, toss on your cloak, and grab your flint. The oil lamp up in the tower needs checking. Always does. You step outside into a world that smells of brine, rotting kelp, and storm clouds. The wind slaps your face with a chill that wakes you up faster than any coffee ever could. Not that you know what coffee is, it won't reach Denmark for a while yet. The tower looms above you, 28 feet of limestone and oak-beamed ambition. It's not pretty, not grand, but it's yours. You built part of it yourself, at least the interior stairs which you are reminded of every time they creak like a haunted violin. You take a moment to scan the horizon. Nothing but gray. Gray clouds, gray sea, gray gulls screaming like tiny demons. Somewhere out there a boat may be watching for your light, or may have seen it last night and breathed a sigh of relief. You start the climb, boots thudding up damp stairs. You count them as you go 56 today, though that number shifts depending on how badly the tide warped the lower steps. You've patched them with driftwood and wishful thinking. You reach the lens room, and by lens, of course, we mean a crude, smoky reflector made of polished copper. The whale oil lamp is still sputtering slightly its wick in need of trimming. You'll do that later. For now, you snuff it and crack the window for fresh air, which instantly makes everything colder. Everything up here smells like scorched fat and old smoke. You make a note mentally because your hands are full to clean the reflectors again. Salt builds up fast, especially when the waves decide they hate you, which is often. The floor creaks beneath your boots. Not dangerously. Yet. You kneel to check the oil basin. Still half full, but the wick is black and crusted. You'll need to soak and comb it, or it'll burn unevenly again tonight. You sigh. You always sigh here. It's part of the ritual. Then you hear it distant thunder. Or maybe just the rocks shifting under the tide. You're never sure, and that's half the dread. Here's something quirky for you. Some keepers in your era genuinely believed that spirits lived in the tower's higher reaches. Something about the wind sounding like voices. You chuckle to yourself. You've only heard a spirit once, and it was definitely a seagull trapped in the lantern housing. Still, there's an unease to high places, especially in solitude. The weight of the sea pressing in from every direction. The feeling that your tower, your world, could be swallowed in one good wave. You exhale through your nose and whisper, "Still here. Not for drama, just because it helps." And now it's time to start the real work. You trudge back down the narrow spiral staircase, one hand brushing the damp stone wall for balance. Your boots squelch faintly with each step, still wet from yesterday's rain even though you hung them by the hearth overnight. They never really dry out. Welcome to the North Sea. Downstairs, the room is still dim, the candle burning low and wobbly, like it's got stage fright. You sigh again. A good day always starts with the ritual of disappointment, your breakfast. There's no kitchen here. No pantry. Just a crude shelf where you keep your food wrapped in linen and desperation. You lift the cloth again from the chunk of black rye. Same bread, different day. It's crusted over so hard that you wonder if it's turning into rock. You gnaw off a piece anyway, your jaw doing more work than your stomach. The taste is, let's say, earthy. It tastes like dirt and regret with a hint of caraway seed if you're lucky. Next to the bread is a tin of pickled fish. You pop the lid with a grimace. The brine smell hits you in the face like a slap from Neptune himself. One piece is enough. Maybe two if you're feeling bold, but let's not get reckless. You wash it down with cold rainwater that you ladled from the barrel by the door. It tastes faintly of moss and whatever fell in last night, but you're too hungry to care. You sit on the little stool next to your hearth, chewing slowly and staring into nothing. No fire yet. You'll save the wood for tonight when the cold really sets in. Right now, you can still see your breath puffing out in front of you, curling like fog. The chill is the kind that settles in your bones like a squatter and never leaves. As you chew, you listen. Gulls cry. Waves crash. Wind moans around the tower like a tired ghost. That's your morning soundtrack. You glance at the floor and spot a new rat dropping. Just one. Like a calling card. They're back. Again. The war continues. You mutter a promise under your breath to lay more traps, even though the last time you did a particularly bold rat took the bait and dragged the trap halfway up the chimney. You never did find it. Rats weren't just pests in the 1600s, they were full-on roommates. Historians still argue whether lighthouse keepers in your era were provided with cats or had to beg for them, but you're on the waiting list. One day. Maybe. You shift on the stool joints, popping slightly from the cold. You grab a bit of dried apple from your personal stash. It's shriveled and brown, but sweet enough to remind you of summer just barely. You chew slowly, savoring every bite like it's a king's feast. Suddenly, there's a soft creak at the door. You freeze. Not in fear exactly, just that nervous little jolt you get when anything moves unexpectedly out here. But it's just the wind pushing against the warped hinges. Again. You need to oil those. Add it to the list. You pull on your outer coat, thick wool patched at the elbows, smelling vaguely of salt and smoke, and wrap your scarf twice around your neck. The scarf was a gift from someone back in the village. You don't remember their name now. Funny how solitude makes memory. Wobbly. You sit for a moment longer, letting your eyes drift to the one scrap of paper tacked to the wall. It's a rough sketch of the coast drawn in charcoal by a sailor who passed through last year. The paper's curled and faded, but it's something to look at besides rocks and fog. It's strange eating every meal alone. No chatter, no laughter, just chewing and thinking. You've had visitors, traders, the occasional inspector, but the regular rhythm of your life is one of quiet repetition. And somehow, in that silence, your thoughts get louder. Today, you think about home. Not this home, the tower, but the little village where you were born. There was a time when you thought you'd grow up to be a cooper or a shipwright, maybe. But then the sea got inside you like it does with all lighthouse keepers eventually. Once you feel needed by the waves, there's no turning back. There's a superstition among lighthouse folk that the sea chooses its keepers. That, once you light the fire and tend it faithfully, you're bound to it. If you ever abandon your post, the sea will call you back. Sometimes gently, sometimes not. You shake the thought away and rise from your stool. The day's just starting, and you've already wasted enough time contemplating your own emotional decay. Time to prep the next job. You toss your breakfast scraps into the small tin bucket by the door rat bait, if we're being honest, and reach for your work gloves. The rough leather is stiff, but still warm from where they hung above last night's embers. You slide them on, flexing your fingers. Outside, the light is shifting. Still no sun, but at least it's not pitch black anymore. Just extremely gray, which around here passes for a weather upgrade. You open the door and step out into the wind again. It hits harder this time, like it's annoyed you came back. Your breath comes out in little puffs, instantly whisked away. You crunch across the gravel path toward the side of the tower, where your tools are stashed beneath a weather-stained tarp. It's all there, the oil buckets, the rope, the cleaning brush that's been chewed on by gulls more times than you can count. You grab a handful of dried seaweed. While you're at it, makes good tinder when everything else is too wet to catch. As you bend to collect your things, you spot something on the ground. A seashell. Unusual, this far up the cliff. You pick it up, turning it over in your fingers. It's smooth and pink and slightly broken, but it's beautiful in that quiet, accidental way nature sometimes is. You tuck it into your coat pocket without a word. It's little things like that that keep you grounded. Back inside, you brush crumbs off the table and prepare for the next task, the tower lens. Again, always the lens. But before that, maybe you'll reward yourself with one final slice of that pickled fish. A terrible idea. You do it anyway. The tower calls you again. You leave the cramped living quarters behind, bundled in layers that never seem warm enough. The wind nips at your face like a jealous child tugging at your coat. Your hands are already raw from the salt air and constant scrubbing. But the job won't do itself. And if it doesn't get done, the light dies, and sailors die, and you'll probably dream about it for weeks. You circle the base of the lighthouse, once eyeing the sky. It's a heavy gray, the kind of sky that feels close and pressing, like it might fall on you if you look at it too long. The clouds over Denmark are rarely kind, and today they're especially sour. You take the long climb up the winding stone stairs again, each step a familiar grind in your thighs. There's no railing. Of course, there's no railing. Why would 17th century builders prioritize safety? You steady yourself by dragging your fingers along the wall, which is damp and slick in patches. A lovely feature. At the top, you nudge open the iron-banded hatch into the lens room. The wind catches it with a jerk, nearly pulling the door out of your hand. You grunt and push it closed behind you. Inside the space is tight cramped and filled with the smell of oil smoke and the faint tang of rotting seaweed that always seems to find its way in. You kneel by the large central lamp. It's not a lens like you'd recognize today. No Fresnel beauty. This is a clunky copper basin with a central wick and reflectors made of hand-polished metal plates. The whale oil still coats everything with a greasy film. The flame you extinguished earlier left a thick crust of soot clinging to the chimney housing. You grimace. This is your main task for the morning, clearing the soot and checking the integrity of the reflector plates. You reach for your cloth bundle, unwrapping the brushes, scrapers, and rags you keep lovingly, grudgingly cleaned. Some of them are repurposed shirt sleeves. One might be an old sock. You scrape the soot from the chimney glass with gentle, deliberate strokes. It flakes off like black snow. You have to be careful not to scratch the glass. It's already cracked in one corner, and replacement means a long wait for a delivery that may or may not come by spring. Historians still argue whether these lamps were more of a symbolic gesture than actual navigational tools. But you've seen the look on a captain's face when he spots your light in time. So, no. Not symbolic. Not to them. You shift to the copper reflectors. The trick is to polish without wearing them down. You rub the surface in slow circles, watching your warped reflection emerge from the grime. You look tired. Honestly, you look like someone who sleeps with one eye open and the other on a rat. Quirky detail for you. Some lighthouse keepers believed you had to polish the reflectors during a certain moon phase, or the light would fail to carry across water. You've tried it. Doesn't seem to make a difference. But it gives you something to blame when things go wrong. Outside the small ventilation slat, the wind howls louder. It cuts across the tower in sharp bursts that rattle the copper fittings. You pause. That sound, the sharp clink of metal, wasn't normal. You glance upward. One of the rivets in the housing has come loose, dangling like a loose tooth. Great. You fish around in your pouch for a bit of wire and wrap it tight, holding the rivet in place with your thumb. You'll need to hammer it later, but for now it won't fall and stab you in the face. Probably. A gust of wind pushes against the tower, and you feel the whole structure shudder slightly. Just a little. Nothing new. You breathe in the oily metallic air and try to convince yourself it's all part of the charm. There's a small shelf nearby where you keep your tools of optimism, a few spare wicks, a mostly intact tinderbox, and your backup flint. Next to it, your logbook sits. Leather-bound, cracked at the spine. You'll update it later. First, finish the cleaning. You crouch again and shift to the base of the burner, checking for crusted oil. There's a puddle forming in the trough leakage from a loose valve. You tighten the brass ring, careful not to overdo it. The metal is old, and brute force only leads to regret and plumbing that explodes when you least expect it. One more wipe, and the base shines back at you. Imperfect, but gleaming. That'll have to do. You glance outside through the narrow slit window. The sea churns below gray-green waves curling over black rocks. A fishing boat bobs in the distance, sails taut. Maybe they saw your light last night. Maybe not. But tonight they'll be looking for it again. And if it's not there, well, you stand slowly, your knees cracking in protest. You stretch-roll your shoulders and rub your face with your sleeve. There's a smudge of soot on your nose now, but you don't care. Who's going to judge the gulls? You run your hands along the walls as you descend the tower again. The salt has begun to crust in the mortar lines, a sort of natural exfoliation you never asked for. It crunches under your fingertips. Back on the ground floor, you duck into the narrow space where you keep spare supplies. A shelf holds a few more barrels of whale oil, thick, heavy, and forever smelling of the sea's darker moods. There's a faint layer of frost on one of the lids. You'll need to thaw that one by the fire if tonight's wind keeps up. You pause to write a few words in chalk on the slate board by the door, lamp cleaned. Rivet loose, secured. Oil stable. It's not poetry, but it's survival. The next keeper, if there ever is one, will need it. You step outside again and let the sea air hit you in the face once more. Your cheeks sting, but you breathe it in anyway. There's something in it. Not just salt and cold. Something that tells you you're still alive, still part of this strange little outpost between civilization and chaos. You press your hand briefly to the stone of the tower and murmur, "Still standing." It's not a prayer. Not exactly. Just a pact. There's something deeply unsettling about the way time behaves out here. Not just in the philosophical sense, though. You've definitely stared at the horizon long enough to start contemplating your place in the universe, but in the literal, annoying, slow-drifting sense. Out here with no ticking clocks, no bustling towns, no bells ringing in chapels or shop doors, hours move like treacle sliding down a tilted plate. Thick, slow, and somehow still unpredictable. You check the position of the sun, or where the sun should be smothered behind layers of slate-gray clouds. A faint brightness marks midday. Ish. That means it's time to record the weather. Again. You shuffle back inside your scarf, damp from fog, and your gloves streaked with soot. From a shelf near the hearth, you grab the slate weatherboard and a stub of chalk. Today's notes will be brief. Temp cold. Wind brutal. Visibility laughable. A more official version of these observations gets scratched into the real logbook, but that one's for the quarterly inspections. This one is just for you, a running tally of why today is difficult, as if writing it down somehow makes the isolation more reasonable. You pace slowly to the tiny glass window beside the door. It's smudged and slightly warped, but from here you get the best view of the sea. The waves are restless. Always are. But today they've got that ragged, hungry look like the tide's itching to swallow a boat or two. Speaking of boats, your next duty. You lift the long wooden spyglass off its wall bracket, a hefty brass thing, its leather binding cracked but still functional. You carry it out to the outer ledge of the lighthouse, where the stone platform gives a wide, if precarious, view of the surrounding waters. You brace it on the lip of the battlement and scan the horizon. That's the trick of it, really. Spotting things before they become tragedies. Sail shadows, broken masts, drifting flotsam. You watch for unusual swells that might suggest a capsized hull. You've even seen the flash of a distress lantern once or twice, though it's a rare, desperate thing. Right now, you spy only gulls. Gulls and one lonely merchant sloop hugging the coast too closely for comfort. You scribble a quick note in the margin of your logbook, sloop, red sail, eastbound tight line to reef. Maybe they'll be fine. Maybe they've got a savvy helmsman. Maybe they'll see your light tonight and veer away just in time. You hope so. Historians still argue whether 17th century keepers truly understood the full extent of their navigational role, or whether they were just seen as human lamp posts. But as someone who's stared down a squall while a fishing vessel turned hard to starboard, you know your job matters. Back inside, you kick your boots against the doorframe to shake off the salt crust, then rehang the spyglass. Your stomach growls, but you ignore it. You've got more immediate problems. The wind has changed. You pause in the center of the room and tilt your head slightly. There it is, that low, whistling undertone. It snakes through the cracks in the stone like a breath held too long. You know this sound. It means the wind is shifting direction. A storm might be forming. You pull on your outer coat again, yes, the one with the elbow patches and a hint of goat. That one. You grab the sailcloth tarp from the storage nook and head outside, making your way toward the supply shed that clings stubbornly to the cliff's edge like it forgot to be afraid of gravity. The shed, to put it kindly, is a mess. Always has been. The door doesn't shut properly. The shingles peel upward like they're trying to escape. But inside are your reserves, dry wood, extra oil flasks, rope spools, and a rusty tin of nails that smells like despair. You check the oil barrels first, still sealed. You wedge the tarp around the base to prevent water from seeping under the boards. Then, you stack the driest firewood on top, just in case tonight's weather turns everything else into a sponge. You consider lashing the shed door shut, but the last time you did that it jammed for a week and nearly cost you a toenail. You decide to risk it flapping. As you work, your eye catches on something glinting in the grass beyond the shed. You squint. It's a bit of sea glass, worn and cloudy, but sharp at the edges. It probably washed up from a wreck and tumbled its way this far inland. You pocket it next to the seashell. Your collection of flotsam grows slowly but meaningfully. You finish tying off the tarp and head back toward the tower. The sky has darkened even further, which seems rude, honestly. It was barely mid-afternoon. You mutter to yourself about medieval weather and how no one back home would believe a full day could look like midnight. Inside again, you light a small fire not for heat but for the morale boost. The flames flicker low in the hearth, casting warm shadows across the stone walls. You sit for a few minutes, stretching your legs and watching the fire like it might offer you advice. It doesn't. Instead, you grab the logbook. You flip to today's page, ink-stained, smudged, and water-warped. The entries are practical. Cold wind from northwest visibility 4 knots. But then, tucked into the margin, you scribble something less official, sky darkening. Wind shifting. Something's coming, because you can feel it in your bones. The kind of weight in the air that's more than weather. It's old and wet, and whispering something just beyond your hearing. You set the book down and begin preparing the tower for the storm. You double-check the fastenings on the upper hatch. You wrap extra cloth around the lantern housing in case the wind tries to snuff it out again. You haul 2 more buckets of oil up the stairs, one in each hand, sweating through your coat before you even reach the top. When the wind howls harder this time, you don't flinch. You just mutter, "Not today," and press your back to the lantern like a watchman at the gate. Outside, gulls scream. Inside, the light waits. Dinner is as always a bit of a tragic comedy. You clatter around the small iron pot balanced precariously over the fire, poking it with the same wooden spoon you've used for 3 meals too many. It's thick barley stew tonight because it's always thick barley stew. You long ago stopped pretending to taste subtle flavors. Now it's just hot, not hot, and edible with effort. You give it a stir and watch the beige glop shift around a chunk of something that might be fish, or possibly very brave potato. With a resigned sigh, you ladle it into your bowl and blow across the surface. Steam curls up into your face like a judgmental ghost. As you eat carefully, slowly, because if you burn your tongue, there's no coming back from that. You listen to the wind rattle the small chimney pipe above. It groans like a bored ogre and whistles like a drunk sailor. The lighthouse is making its usual symphony of creaks and moans. By now, you can identify each sound like a musician picks out notes. That thud is the eastern shutter loose again. The tapping. Probably the rope you tied around the oil barrel flapping in protest. That wheezing sound under the floorboards. Don't think about it. It's either a rat or a ghost, and neither pays rent. Once your bowl is empty, well, mostly empty. Some things are better left uneaten. You wipe it out with a dry cloth and stow it back on the shelf. You make a half-hearted attempt to tidy the space. There's only so much you can do. When your kitchen bedroom and emergency infirmary are all the same, 7 feet of damp wood cleanliness becomes more of a concept than a practice. Then it's logbook time again. Always the logbook. You unroll the creased parchment that tracks your daily supplies. You've got whale oil. 2 barrels, 1 low, salt pork enough for 4 days, if rationed. Barley infinite, apparently. Drinking water. 2 jugs, 1 slightly green. Dried apples, just enough to make you miss fresh ones. You jot down the numbers with your scratchy quill, the ink bleeding slightly into the paper's soft fibers. A drop of moisture drips from the ceiling beam. You mutter something unprintable and dab at it with your sleeve. And then there's the matter of the rats. Yes, they're back. You hear the faint rustle under the woodpile near the hearth. You freeze. Another rustle. Then, cheeky little beasts' tiny claws click across the stone floor. You grab your boot and lob it in the direction of the sound. A squeak, a scramble, silence. You retrieve your boot, triumphant. The rat wins most days, but not this one. Quirky fact, some keepers actually train the local cats to hunt vermin and guard the light. Unfortunately, your only feline companion is a carved driftwood cat named Serene, who sits smugly on the mantel. He's not especially helpful. You return to your stool and stare at the fire again. The flames dance lazily, now low and murmuring. You toss on a chunk of damp wood, which lets out a hiss and a small plume of steam. The fire sputters but holds. A knock sounds against the window. Your heart leaps. Then you remember the shutters bang like that in a gale. Still, you rise and peek through the pane. Nothing but swirling fog and blackness. The sea is invisible now, devoured by the rising storm. The whole world feels like it's ending 2 feet past your front door. You sigh and reach for the poker, adjusting the fire with slow, deliberate movements. You're not afraid. Not exactly. Just aware. Aware of how small your tower is against the roar of the elements. Aware that if something went wrong, if the lamp shattered, or you slipped, or lightning struck, help is weeks away. If it comes at all. Historians still debate how isolated keepers truly were. Some argue that coastal villages checked in weekly. Others say entire seasons passed without contact. From where you sit now, cold stew in your belly and damp socks on your feet, the second theory feels more accurate. You reach for your evening distraction, the worn copy of Den Danske Søfarts Almanac, the Danish seafarer's almanac. It's missing a few pages and smells faintly of mildew, but it's full of ship schematics, sailor's lore, and title charts from 5 years ago. You flip to your favorite passage about a supposed sea serpent spotted in the Kattegat Strait. The drawing looks suspiciously like a log with ambition. Still, you smile. You start to read aloud, quietly, pacing the room like an old scholar. And lo, the creature's back rose from the waters in 7 arches, each glistening like the shell of a boiled egg left too long in the sun. It's nonsense, of course, but it feels like company, like you're not the only one watching the sea for signs of monsters. A sudden gust slams the shutters hard. You flinch. The wind is worse now, and the rain has started a slow sideways drizzle at first, then a steady drumming against the glass. You move quickly. Time to check the light. You climb the tower steps again, third time today, and your legs officially hate you. The cold creeps in now, pressing against your clothes with fingers of dampness. Your joints ache. Your nose is red and raw, but the lamp calls. At the top, the wind howls through the slatted vent like a panicked dog. You close the outer hatch as best you can and shield the lantern with your body. You strike the flint. 1, 2, 3 sparks. The wick catches a tiny flicker in the gloom. You pump the bellows, careful not to overshoot. The flame steadies, grows. It stretches upward into the chimney glass like a sun reborn. The reflectors glow faintly, catching the flame and tossing it out in every direction. It's not a modern light beam, no precise focus or piercing ray, but it's visible. It'll reach the sea. You exhale finally. The light is alive. You check the oil feed, steady. You listen for leaks, none. You scrape away a few early soot spots from the glass and then sink to the floor back against the stone wall. Just for a minute. You close your eyes, letting the rhythm of the storm beat against the walls while the flame beside you murmurs in its steady golden whisper. The night has begun, and you're ready. There's something different about the sea tonight. You don't see it exactly, you feel it. Even through the thick stone walls of the tower, you sense a pressure building just beyond the edges of hearing. A deep, low rumble that could be thunder, or something else entirely. You haul yourself up from the floor of the lantern room, joints stiff and reluctant. The flame flickers behind you, casting long shadows down the spiral stairwell as you descend. You need to patrol the grounds, just a quick loop. You tell yourself it's standard protocol. You tell yourself it's just to check the ropes on the shed again. But you know it's more than that. You need to see it. You need to stand at the cliff edge and stare into the dark as if that'll help you make sense of the unease crawling under your skin. Outside, the rain slaps sideways across your coat. The wind doesn't howl anymore, it growls, low, guttural. You tighten your scarf and make your way around the base of the lighthouse, boots crunching over gravel and sodden grass. The shed is somehow still intact, though the door bangs ominously on its hinges. You ignore it. Your eyes are drawn instead to the sea. At first, there's nothing, just black. Then your eyes adjust. There, along the distant surf, you see them. Lanterns. 3, no 4, faint lights. Swinging, bobbing. Ships, maybe, but the movement's all wrong. They don't glide, they jerk, like something unsteady off-kilter. You squint harder, but the fog thickens, swallowing the shapes like a curtain falling on a play you weren't invited to. You blink. The lights are gone. Just tricks of the storm, you tell yourself. Phantom lights common enough out here. Historians still argue whether they were misidentified stars, marsh gas, or the hallucinations of sleep-deprived men with too much salt in their beards. You turn back toward the tower, heart thudding. On the way in, you pass your small brass bell mounted years ago on a crooked wooden post meant to signal distress or alert passing boats in fog. You haven't rung it in months. You brush your fingers over it. Then you notice something etched faintly into the post just below it. A deep scratch like a blade was dragged through wet wood. Just one line. Fresh. You stare at it for a beat longer than necessary. Then you head inside and bolt the door. Back in the main room, the warmth hits you like a blanket. The fire still burns stubborn as ever, and you huddle close, rubbing your hands together. You glance around the room, confirming everything's as it should be. Oil barrels check. Lantern backup check. Driftwood cat judgmental as always. And yet, something nags. You light a smaller lamp and begin a slow inspection of the tower's interior. You do this sometimes when sleep is a fantasy and paranoia becomes practical. You run your fingers along the seams of the stone. You check the lock on the lower hatch. You even peer into the supply closet where old boots go to die. Everything's fine. Until it's not. You hear it, a single, deliberate knock. Not from the wind, not from the shutters. A knock on the wood of your door. You freeze. Another knock. Firm. Rhythmic. 3 taps. You move slowly, silently, lamp in hand toward the door. Your heart pounds in your ears, drowning out the storm. You lean your head against the cold wood, trying to listen. Nothing. You unbolt the door and swing it open. No one. Just the storm wailing louder now, and the endless, unknowable dark. You step outside, cautiously, lamp lifted high. Rain pelts your face. Wind yanks at your coat. There are no footprints in the mud. You shut the door a little faster than usual and bolt it tight. You tell yourself it was a branch or a trick of pressure and wind. You say it aloud to make it real. It was nothing. Still, you pour yourself a mug of the weakest wine known to man, stored since autumn, in a corked gourd that tastes like wet firewood. You sip it anyway, and the burn calms your nerves. Slightly. You sit back near the fire lamp beside you and stare at the wall where a leak has formed a small stain that vaguely resembles a goat. You consider naming it. Anything to keep your thoughts grounded. As the wind reaches a new crescendo outside, you begin humming. A sailor's tune you picked up long ago, something about a woman made of salt who sang to drown men. It's nonsense, of course, but it helps. You don't expect sleep tonight. Most nights you catch a few hours here and there, curled up on the cot like a salted herring. But not tonight. Not with that knock still echoing in your chest. Instead, you gather your tools and prepare for midnight maintenance. The lamp needs polishing. The gears need checking. The wick must be trimmed. You climb the stairs again, one hand on the rail, the other holding your small toolkit. Each creak feels louder in the storm. At the top, the flame flickers steadily, its glow wrapped in a halo of soot and condensation. You kneel and begin your ritual. Wick snipped with care. Oil steady flow. glass wiped clean with a cloth that once belonged to your father. You pause. That's your favorite quirky tidbit for tonight. Many 17th century lighthouse keepers passed down the post from father to son, sometimes for generations. A legacy of light and loneliness. Yours wasn't quite so romantic, just a "you're good with ropes and bad with people, so go be a hermit and light things on fire" kind of promotion. You finish your work and sit again by the window. Through the fog, something glows faintly. This time, it's not the sea. It's inland. Behind the trees at the far edge of the clearing, a flickering orange pulse like a torch. A bonfire. You blink and it's gone. You whisper to yourself, "Go to bed." But instead, you climb down slowly, every step echoing in the stairwell like the beat of a waiting heart. The fire's burned low. The room's quiet now. Almost too quiet. You lie down on the cot, still in your coat. Your eyes flicker shut. But just as sleep finally reaches for you, the bell outside rings. Once, twice, then silence. You sit bolt upright, breath caught in your throat. The bell. You heard it. Clear as anything. 2 solemn chimes in the dark, low and hollow, vibrating straight through the stone walls of the lighthouse. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't your imagination. You swing your legs over the side of the cot and pause, letting the cold seep through your socks like a punishment. The fire's all but gone now, just a faint red blush of embers whispering under blackened logs. Your eyes dart to the door, then to the window. Everything is still. You move slowly, picking up your lamp fingers, trembling slightly as you fumble with the flint. A spark, a hiss, and the lamp glows to life again, casting long shadows that lean suspiciously in directions they probably shouldn't. You walk to the door and hesitate. You don't want to open it. Every rational bone in your body is screaming that a 17th century lighthouse keeper has no business answering ghost bells at midnight. But you also know the rules. Any unexplained signal must be investigated, especially at sea. It could mean a stranded vessel, a lost crew, a desperate survivor, or, of course, a prank by something less friendly. You unlatch the bolt and crack the door open. The wind greets you like an overeager hound shoving its way inside with a sharp howl. You step out, lamp held high, and sweep your gaze across the clearing. Nothing. The grass is bending hard under the gale. The sea beyond is a churning mass of ink and foam. And then there it is again. Ding, ding. You whip around to face the bellpost. There it sways on its usual creaky rope and beam, but now the bell moves of its own accord. Gently, rhythmically, as if tapped by an invisible hand. You step closer, and now you see it. There's something on the ground beside the post. Something that wasn't there earlier. A bundle. You approach slowly, cautiously, until the light from your lamp reveals a small, sodden package of cloth tied with twine. It's paper, or parchment, maybe wrapped in oilskin. A message. You glance around, just in case someone plans to leap out and spook you. But there's only the wind and the rain and your heart thudding in your ears. You kneel and untie the bundle. Inside is a single folded sheet of paper, damp but legible. You hold it up to the lamp. Written in shaky, almost desperate script, the light is wrong. Do not trust it. You stare. Then read it again. And again. You don't understand. The light, your light. It's working fine. You just tended it. You've done nothing different. Same oil, same wick, same flame. You pocket the note and walk a slow circle around the lighthouse, eyes peeled for any sign of footprints, a boat, anything. But the grass is a muddy soup, footprints impossible to distinguish, and there's no sign of anyone or anything else. Historians still argue whether local villagers truly feared the lighthouse's beam, believing it to disturb the spirits of the sea. Some folklore claimed that the eye of flame could blind not just ships, but souls, that to look directly at the light too long was to invite madness. You've always laughed that off. Mostly. You return inside and latch the door again. Hard. Back by the fire, you dry the note as best you can and study the handwriting. Not familiar. Not the same as the coastal courier's, and certainly not your own. You flip the parchment. No signature. No seal. No hint of who might have left it. So, now you have a phantom bell ringer, a cryptic warning, and some very suspect lights in the trees. And it's barely past midnight. You decide to do the only logical thing, write it all down in the logbook. Not because it makes sense, but because it's the only way to keep your thoughts from unraveling completely. You dip your quill and begin unusual occurrence. 2 chimes at midnight. No visible cause. Recovered anonymous note beside bellpost. Message reads. You pause, glance over your shoulder, pure reflex. Then you finish copying the words and underline them twice. Afterward, you sit back and let the silence wrap around you again. Only it's not silent now. There's a new sound. Soft, subtle. A sort of low whistling, not from wind or storm, but from within the tower. You rise slowly and follow it, lamp in hand, heart somewhere near your throat. It's coming from the stairwell. You creep closer, and it becomes clearer, a melody, almost like a lullaby hummed just under the breath. High-pitched, childlike, impossible. But there it is. You climb the first step, then another. With each rise, the sound grows stronger, twisting upward through the spiral stairwell like smoke. You reach the mid-landing and freeze. The sound stops. Your lamp flickers. You glance up and swear, just for a heartbeat. You see something move on the landing above. You charge up the remaining stairs in a flurry of cold panic light, bouncing wildly freehand, gripping the banisters so hard your knuckles crack. You reach the top. Nothing. The lamp glows peacefully. The reflectors hum. The flame dances in its chimney like it always does. But on the inside of the lantern glass there's a foggy outline, a smudge like a handprint. Small, child-sized. You stare. That's impossible. No one else has been up here. And even if someone had, they'd have had to climb past you. You'd have heard. You would have heard. You wipe it away. The glass is cold to the touch, and for a moment your own breath fogs it again, mirroring the ghostly print you just erased. Your mouth is dry. You whisper, "Who's there?" Nothing answers. No bell. No hum. Just the low, steady flame crackling with complete indifference. Back downstairs, you wrap yourself in every blanket you own and curl up in the cot like a worried cinnamon roll. Sleep, when it finally arrives, comes in broken shards, short bursts of dreams filled with twisted staircases, lanterns that whisper, and a sea that keeps rising, rising, rising. You wake twice to check the door. You check the light 3 times. Each time it's still burning, just as it should be. But even in the warm glow of the fire, the note's words won't leave you. The light is wrong. The morning comes slowly, dragging itself out from under the weight of the storm like a hungover sailor with no sense of time. You don't notice at first. You're curled on the cot halfway between a dream and a memory, the warmth of the fire keeping your eyelids stubbornly closed. In your mind, you're back in the village, younger, dumber, and far less invested in lamp maintenance. Someone's laughing. You think it's your sister. Or maybe it's the storm itself wearing her voice like a disguise. Then a beam of gray light sneaks through the crack in the shutters and lands squarely on your nose. You sneeze yourself awake. You sit up with the grace of a potato rolling off a table. Your joints ache. Your mouth tastes like wool. You blink blearily at the interior of the lighthouse, surprised to find it exactly where you left it. The fire's nothing but ash. The bell is silent. But the note, still there. You fish it from your pocket and stare at it one more time. The ink has bled slightly overnight, making the letters look even more urgent. The light is wrong. You should burn it. That's what your gut says. But your gut also said to eat dried herring for breakfast yesterday, so maybe it's not the most reliable source of guidance. Instead, you tuck the note under a loose stone on the mantel. Not hidden, not displayed. Just shelved. You need fresh air. Outside, the storm has finally broken. The world is wet and clean and humming with post-tempest silence. The sea glistens under a washed-out sky, and the gulls have returned to their usual arguing. You do your morning rounds. Lantern intact, oil stable, no fresh scratches on the bellpost. You stare at the spot where the bundle appeared. Nothing there now but soggy grass and a few lonely footprints, yours maybe. Or not. You head down to the supply shed just to give your hands something to do. The place still smells like mold, rope, and regret. You check inventory, spare wicks, full oil barrels, salt, dried meat, more salt. You take a moment to log the previous night's events more carefully. The logbook is a thick beast of a thing bound in leather and filled with uneven scrawl. You're not much of a writer, but you've always been meticulous. You flip back through old entries. Most are mundane, fog thick again. 3 ships passed safely. Storm incoming. Birds flying inland. Replaced top wick. Flame clean. Then you hit something odd. An entry from almost a year ago. You don't even remember writing it, but there it is in your own scratchy hand. Light faltered briefly. No wind, no cause. Reignited without effort. Felt, observed. You stare at the word observed. It sits uneasily on the page like a rat in a breadbasket. You had forgotten that. Or maybe you chose to. Historians still argue whether lighthouse keepers in isolated regions suffered from a form of environmental paranoia, what one 19th century sailor dubbed the candle madness. The idea was that watching one flame alone night after night could do something strange to a man's mind, like being stared back at by the fire. You never used to believe in that. Never. But now you slam the book shut and head inside to make tea, if you can call steeping dried bark and something that may or may not be moss tea. You take a sip. It tastes like ambition and wet shoe. As the morning unfolds, your mind wanders back to the inland lights. You haven't walked that far in weeks, too busy, too wet, too many excuses. But now the sun's out. The air is calm. And, let's be honest, you're not going to get anything useful done while you're pacing around like a suspicious goat. So, you pack a few essentials: lantern knife, a slice of hard cheese you stole from last month's supply crate. You tell yourself it's just a walk, a stretch, a break from the tower's walls. You follow the path, inland, boots squelching with every step. The air smells of damp leaves and sea salt. The world feels lighter, too light after the weight of the storm. It's like the storm took something with it when it left. About half a mile in, you reach the clearing where you think you saw the orange light last night. There's nothing now, just grass ferns and a single scorched patch of earth perfectly round. You squat beside it and run your fingers through the blackened grass. Still warm, still smoldering. That's not natural. You poke around the edge and find something half buried, a shard of glass. Smooth on one side, jagged on the other. It looks like lantern glass, but warped, melted almost. You pocket it and rise slowly, the hairs on your neck standing at full attention. There's a snap behind you, a twig. You turn. Nothing. You whisper, "Hello, silence." Then movement, just a flicker off to the left. You move toward it, cautiously parting the ferns. And there, dangling from a tree branch at eye level, is a bundle of twine, just like the one from the bellpost. Another message. Your hand shakes as you untie it. Inside, the parchment is wrapped around something heavy, cold. You unwrap both layers and discover a small bronze pendant, greened with age, shaped like an open eye. The paper reads, "Watch the Watchers." You look around, but the forest stares back blankly. You don't like this. You don't like any of this. You shove the pendant and note into your pocket and make a fast return to the lighthouse, half expecting to find the tower missing or on fire or replaced by a giant sea cucumber. But no. It's still there, solid, and waiting, its lantern quietly glowing behind thick glass. You take the pendant and drop it into the bottom of a jar, screw the lid on, and place it on the shelf beside your emergency flares. You're not superstitious, but you are tired of people or things leaving cursed jewelry in your jurisdiction. As you settle in for the evening, you feel that familiar tension return, the one that coils in your gut every time the sky turns gray. The sun is setting. The night shift begins again. And this time, you're not sure the light is the only thing doing the watching. The dusk slides in like a thief. One moment, the world is bathed in the hazy gold of a late northern afternoon, and the next, it's wearing shadows like a second skin. You don't notice how fast it changes until it's too late to do anything but light the lamp and hope the dark doesn't ask questions tonight. You climb the stairs with your usual gear oil can, wick trimmer steadying breath. The pendant from the woods still sits sealed in its jar, below, quiet, unblinking. You try not to think about it, or the message it came with, or the fact that someone or something is clearly playing a game you're not ready for. At the lantern housing, everything appears normal. The reflectors gleam, the glass is clean, the flame is ready. You top up the oil, trim the wick with care, and relight the flame. It leaps to life with a little hiss and flickers in place. Good. That's one thing not broken yet. As the beam begins its slow sweep out to sea, you take a moment to lean against the iron railing and watch. It's always mesmerizing, this steady turning light slicing through darkness in a rhythmic, almost hypnotic arc. You blink. Wait. There, just for a split second, was there a double pulse. You lean in, squinting. No, just your imagination. Maybe, possibly. Still, your hand goes to the logbook anyway, and you jot it down, initial lighting sequence normal. Possible irregular flicker, brief not repeated. No mechanical fault observed. You've started noting everything now. Every cough from the lamp, every draft in the stairwell, every creak of the floorboards. You're either going to make an excellent historical source one day, or be the subject of a very dry psychological thesis. You descend the stairs and fix yourself a mug of barley tea, spiked with just enough honey to pretend it's tolerable. You wrap yourself in your wool cloak and settle into the chair by the fireplace, logbook still in hand. And then, because you're either brave, foolish, or simply tired of being confused, you pull the pendant back out. It's heavier than it looks. Rough around the edges, clearly handmade, likely old. The eye carved into it is stylized, just a few lines etched into the metal, but there's something unsettling about how the pupil catches the firelight. It almost seems to follow you. You study the engraving on the back. Faint, but visible, a single rune, Nordic, though aged almost into abstraction. You've seen enough of the local symbology to recognize the basic shapes. This one might be alges, a rune of protection. Or it might just be someone's best attempt at a seagull. You hold it over the firelight, tilting it slowly. You half expect it to react, glow maybe, or whisper dark secrets, but it does nothing. Just sits there, heavy, quiet. Historians still argue whether runes were used purely for cultural symbolism or carried actual spiritual weight. The Danish coastal communities, especially the ones with older pre-Christian roots, often blended Norse beliefs with local maritime superstitions. You've heard stories of sailors wearing runes for luck, or for warding off sea spirits, or less charmingly, for binding them. You don't want to think about binding anything. You wrap the pendant back in its cloth and return it to the jar. Enough of that. Later that night, as you step out to check the bellpost, you notice something odd. The sky is clear, utterly, unnervingly clear. Not a single cloud above. No wind. The sea is glass. The stars shine with sharp, crystalline brilliance. You should be relieved, but it feels wrong. This coast is never still. There's always a breeze or mist or gulls hollering at each other like drunks outside a tavern. But now, silence. Your breath fogs gently in the air. You listen. Nothing. And then there it is again. That sound. Not the bell. Not the lullaby from the stairwell. Something else. A whisper, perhaps, except it's not coming from any one direction. It's all around you, like the sound of distant surf folding in on itself. You walk the perimeter boots, crunching softly on gravel lantern swinging at your side. Then you see it. In the grass, just beyond the bellpost footprints. Fresh ones. Barefoot. Small. You kneel beside them. The impressions are light, delicate, and vanish halfway across the clearing. No sign of returned steps. Just gone. You stand slowly, heart-thudding. Behind you something creaks. You spin around. The door to the lighthouse open. You closed that door, latched it even. You move fast, every step measured. Inside, the fire still burns low, everything seemingly untouched. Except the logbook. It's open. To a blank page. No, not blank. Words are scrawled across it in a frantic hand, definitely not yours. The light sees. It remembers. Don't let it blink. You back away from the book like it just hissed at you. This has gone well past the local kids having fun theory. You relight the fire with a fresh log and sit facing the door. You're done pretending this is normal. And now, as the hours drag on, the light above continues its endless turning, out to sea, over the cliffs, across the grass, over and over. You find yourself staring at the floor, and you realize something. The shadow of the lantern, the one it casts through the lighthouse windows, should shift, gently flickers with the wind, move with the light. But it's not moving. It's still. Frozen. You stand and walk to the wall. Touch it. The shadow doesn't react. You run upstairs in a rush, taking the steps 2 at a time. The lamp burns steadily, flame dancing as expected, the mechanism clicking through its usual rhythm. You check everything. No obstruction, no blockage. And yet below the shadow remains still, as if something's holding it in place. Something watching. You descend slowly, carefully, unsure what you'll find. When you reach the bottom again, the shadow is gone. Just gone. You stare at the wall, then at the empty hearth, then at your own trembling hands. You take the logbook and add a final line. Shadow froze. Not possible. No mechanical cause. Reevaluate flame behavior. You sit back down, close the book, and press your back to the wall. You've got hours left before sunrise. And right now, you're not sure if you're keeping the light, or if the light is keeping you. you don't sleep. Not because you're brave or especially stubborn, though sure you'll accept a medal later, but because the idea of closing your eyes, while whatever this is moves through your lighthouse, feels about as wise as napping during a barn fire. So you sit there, mug of barley tea gone cold, and listen. Every tick of the brass mechanism upstairs is now thunder in your ears. The light keeps turning. The shadow doesn't return. For once, that doesn't feel like a good thing. Eventually, dawn breaks. Not with a bang, or even a polite knock, just a slow gray drip that seeps into the windows and spills across the floorboards. A pale, exhausted morning. You rise, spine cracking like a weathered hull, and shuffle upstairs to tend the lamp. It's still burning, obedient as ever. You extinguish it carefully and crack open the windows to let the salted breeze in. The fresh air helps, slightly. You let it fill your lungs cold and sharp as if it might somehow scrape the fear from your chest. You descend the stairs slowly, passing your reflection in the window. You pause. Wait. That's not your reflection. It's wearing your coat, yes. Standing at your height. But it's not moving with you. You raise a hand. The figure in the window stays perfectly still. You blink hard. The image wavers, then shifts into place, mirroring your gesture. Your heart hammers. You stare for a moment longer, then turn and walk away. Back to rational thought. Maybe sleep-deprived thought, but at least thought. And breakfast. You're going to need it. You dig into your stores, dried fish, rye biscuits, a chunk of dubious cheese, and what might once have been an apple. You eat mechanically, watching the sea through the window. You know you have a task ahead today. You need to investigate inland again. The pendant, the footprints, the shadows, they're circling something. And you can't wait for the answer to knock on your door again. It already did that once. You pack a better kit this time. Knife, compass, full oilskin flask, and yes, a sling of emergency biscuits. You never know when you'll need to throw carbs at something mysterious and menacing. As you step outside, you notice something near the base of the lighthouse, 3 small stones arranged in a triangle. You didn't put them there. They're perfectly spaced, each about the size of a fist. Beneath the center one is a scrap of parchment half tucked under the rock. You bend down. The paper reads, "It only ends when it forgets." You crush it in your hand, resisting the urge to shout into the wind. Whoever or whatever is sending these notes is doing it with flair. You'd appreciate the theatrics more if they didn't make you feel like you're being hunted by an art major with a supernatural grudge. You glance up at the tower. It looms quietly, its top window reflecting the light like a blank eye. You leave the stones untouched and head inland. This time you push further. Past the clearing with the burnt grass beyond the gnarled trees and mossy rocks that seem to whisper as you pass. You notice patterns now, things you missed before. Trees with bark peeled in clean, deliberate strips. Birds silent in areas where they should be singing. A faint scent like iron and salt and something else lingers in the air. Then at last you find it. A hut. Half sunken, tucked between 2 ridges, nearly invisible unless you're looking for it. The wood is old, weathered to silver, and the roof is partially collapsed, but the door is intact. You approach a slowly, lantern held out before you. The door opens at a touch. No resistance. Inside the hut smells like mold and secrets. Dust motes float in the slanted light. Everything is covered in netting and canvas. A long extinguished lantern hangs from the ceiling beam. On a table near the wall, you find an array of odd items, More of the eye pendants, some rusted, some cracked. A few old logbooks different from yours but familiar in structure. And a drawing. It's crude charcoal on parchment, but you recognize the shape immediately, your lighthouse, from a distance. And around it, dozens of small figures, stick-like, almost childlike, drawn in spirals, eyes exaggerated. At the bottom of the drawing, a single word is scrawled in thick, uneven lines. Memory. You take a breath. Historians still argue whether coastal lighthouses in isolated territories acted solely as navigational aids, or also served ritualistic or spiritual functions in pre-modern communities. A few radical scholars point to sea rite traditions, those involving offerings to the deep or warding against things below the line. These theories are mostly laughed out of academia. But standing in this ruined hut, surrounded by pendants and drawings and logbooks written in hands that clearly stopped suddenly, you're starting to wonder who's laughing now. You gather the logbooks, stuffing them into your satchel. You don't look too closely. Not yet. You leave the pendant drawings where they are. Outside again, the wind picks up. A low moan through the trees. You check your compass. North is wrong. The needle spins slowly like it's been drinking. No fixed point. You swallow hard and start heading back. You hope. The walk is quiet. No birds, no wind. Just the sound of your boots and the occasional creak of old branches above. You reach the coast again, just as the clouds start to build. The lighthouse is waiting framed against the sky like a sentinel or a warning. As you enter, you drop the satchel on the table and remove the logbooks. The oldest is bound in cloth stained with something that might be lamp oil or blood. You flip through. The entries start simple, light, steady. Fog low. Ships passed at dusk. Then strange humming near base. Light flickered. No wind. And finally awoke to light burning though I never lit it. Dreamt of walking into the sea. Woke soaked. You sit back. This isn't just your problem. This has happened before. More than once. Possibly for centuries. You grab your own logbook and begin a cross-reference. There are overlaps. Phrases echo each other across time. The light is wrong. It forgets. Don't let it blink. You add a new entry of your own others kept watch before me. Same patterns, same signs. We are not alone in the tower. As night falls again, you climb the steps to relight the lantern. It sputters once, then burns bright. Too bright. You check the mechanism, the wick, the oil. Everything is fine. The flame just seems eager. You step back. Watch the lens spin. Outside, clouds close in again. The night returns, and this time, you're starting to suspect that what you're lighting isn't just a beacon. It might be a signal. The cold night presses in as you ascend the stairs once more. You can feel the lantern's heat through the iron frame, but it doesn't chase away the chill settling in your bones. The light spins steadily, slicing through the fog that's rolled back in like a slow, creeping tide. It catches on the mist, turning the whole world into a soft, glowing haze. You lean close to the glass, wiping away a smear of salt spray. The reflection catches your eye. Your tired face staring back a ghost of the keeper you used to be before all this started. You blink, and the image flickers. For a moment, you swear you see someone else standing behind you. But when you spin around, there's nothing but the worn wooden walls and the familiar tools of your trade. That's when the knocking begins. Soft at first, like a cautious tap on the lighthouse door. You freeze. Your heartbeat thunders louder than the wind outside. The knocking comes again, steady rhythmic, like someone trying to send a secret code. You approach the door cautiously, every nerve on edge. You open it just a crack, the salty breeze rushing in and tousling your hair. No one is there, only a small folded piece of paper on the doorstep. You pick it up with trembling fingers. Written in the same uneven script as before. The light listens. It waits. Be ready. You swallow hard. Whatever this is, it's no longer just whispers and shadows. It's a conversation. You close the door, lock it firmly, and head back to your logbook. You write the new message carefully, your pen hovering over the page as if the words might vanish if you hesitate. Then you pause. Your eyes drift to the window where the light's beam cuts a steady arc through the fog. Historians still argue whether early lighthouses were merely practical guides or also served as spiritual beacons meant to ward off unknown forces lurking beyond the horizon. Some coastal communities believed the light could trap restless spirits or even act as a guardian against the sea's darker mysteries. You can't help but wonder if this belief is more than just superstition. You decide to investigate the knocking further. Gathering your coat and lantern, you step outside into the cold night. The fog muffles the world, turning familiar shapes into eerie silhouettes. You walk along the cliff edge, following the beam of the lighthouse as it sweeps across the water. The sea is calm, but holds a quiet menace like it's watching you back. Suddenly, you spot footprints in the damp earth, barefoot, small, and unmistakably fresh. You follow them, cautiously, heart pounding in your ears. The trail leads to a rocky outcrop just below the lighthouse where the waves crash with a relentless rhythm. There, half buried in the sand, you find an object glinting faintly under the moonlight. It's another pendant, similar to the one you've seen before, but this one is etched with strange symbols you don't recognize. You pick it up and feel an odd warmth radiate from the metal. You slip it into your pocket, a mixture of curiosity and dread swirling inside you. As you turn back toward the lighthouse, the fog thickens, suddenly swallowing the path behind you. You quicken your pace, the sense of being watched prickling your skin. Back inside, you place the pendant on the table next to your logbooks and stare at it long into the night. You can't shake the feeling that the light above is waiting for something only you can understand. And somewhere deep in the shadows, a quiet voice seems to whisper your name. Morning arrives without sunlight. A dense gray shroud clings to the sky, smothering the coast in gloom. You wake slowly, head pounding, body stiff from another restless night. The pendant you found still sits on the table, quietly gleaming like it knows something you don't. You don't eat. Appetite's gone. Instead, you sit beside the logs, yours the old ones and the huts, and begin to cross-compare. Time has worn many of the older entries down to smudges and ghost letters, but what survives is deeply unsettling. One passage stands out, dated 1629. The sea reflects but does not return. The light watches both directions. When the shadow crossed the lens, I lost 2 hours. I think I heard my own voice calling from the shore. That chill up your spine. Yeah, it's back with a vengeance. It gets worse. Another keeper, decades later, writes of dreams where he walks from the tower into the surf, wakes soaked but safe in bed, and finds his boots muddy. This is no isolated madness. It's a pattern. A cold truth settles in your gut. The lighthouse remembers more than it shows, and something remembers through it. Outside, you hear the gulls crying. It's the first time in days they've made noise. But instead of their usual screeches, there's a strange rhythm, almost musical. You step outside to listen better. You freeze. The gulls are circling in a perfect spiral above the tower. Not a chaotic swarm, but a spinning helix tighter than instinct should allow. Their cries sink in waves. It's eerie hypnotic. You blink rapidly to shake it off. Historians still argue whether seabirds were used by coastal dwellers as omens or as communicators between realms. Most agree it's folklore, but some Norse texts hint at ritual significance, especially when birds formed unnatural patterns. That spiral. Definitely unnatural. You walk around the base of the lighthouse, scanning the rocks for new signs. The triangle of stones from yesterday. Still there, but the center stone is missing. In its place is a scrap of pale fabric, torn linen. You don't want to touch it, but you do anyway. It's damp. It smells of seawater and old smoke. You pocket it carefully and glance back up at the birds. They've scattered. You decide it's time to speak to anyone other than your echo and your fear. The nearest town is a full day's walk if the weather holds and the roads aren't washed out. But you know a quicker way, an old telegraph wire buried halfway to the mainland running through the cliffs. Ancient, corroded, but maybe, just maybe functional. You pack your satchel again, journal, pendant, knife, and take the coastal path. The wind bites, but you keep going. You find the terminal box where the wire once met the surface. It's rusted to oblivion, but the housing is intact. Miraculously, inside the wiring is dry. You run your fingers across the brass keys. The old Morse tapper is stiff, but you test it. It clicks. There's no guarantee anyone's on the other end. Most lines like this went silent years ago. But you try. You tap out a simple message, keeper at homine foire. Urgent. Strange phenomena. Respond. Then you wait. The wind howls through the rocks. The sea murmurs just below. Then click, click, click. Your breath catches. Someone is tapping back. You struggle to translate in real-time rusty Morse, and all but the message is short. No signal past fog. Watch the lens. Do not let it sleep. And then silence. You sit back, heart racing. Either someone's pulling the best prank in history, or you're not as alone as you thought. But the advice echoes something deep in your bones. Do not let it sleep. You return to the lighthouse faster than you left, feet crunching over gravel and moss. Inside, the lens is still turning, still glowing. But the flame inside seems smaller, flickering more than it should. You check the oil full. You check the wick sound. And yet, the light dims for a moment. A pulse, like a breath being held. You lean in. There in the glass, your reflection stares back. And this time, it smiles. You stumble backward, heart pounding like a war drum. The light flares. You see something in the beam, a shape at the edge of the cliff just outside your tower. A tall figure, motionless, shrouded in mist. You run down the stairs and throw open the door. Nothing. Just the sea. The fog. The steady, unbothered wind. You turn and look up at the tower, wondering who or what just smiled through your face. Back inside, you take the pendant from the table. It feels heavier now, like it's full. You don't know what of, but you have an idea, a terrible, sleepless idea. What if the light isn't just a beacon? What if it's a lock? And what if the shadows aren't trying to break in, but trying to break out? You sit in silence for a long time, the pendant heavy in your palm, the air around you thick with questions you don't want answered. Outside, the fog lingers like a held breath. Inside, the lens continues its slow rotation, casting rhythmic glances of light across the interior of the tower. Each time it swings past, your shadow stretches, contracts, stretches again, as if trying to detach and slip away when you're not looking. You glance toward the logbooks. maybe one of them holds a key. Not a literal key, although at this point you wouldn't be surprised if some secret chamber below the lighthouse required a metal disc etched with runes and regret. No, you mean something metaphorical. A hint, a warning, a way out. One entry, written in a florid, almost theatrical hand, catches your eye. Keepers who gaze in too long into the light find their memories begin to thin. I've started writing my name daily, a tether lest I forget I was ever born. You scoff nervously. You've read enough bedtime stories to know where this leads. You quickly jot your own name in your journal, just in case. Then you turn the page and freeze. Your name is already written there, in your own handwriting. 3 times, each dated a week ago. You stare throat dry. You don't remember doing that. You don't remember a lot of things, actually. You can't recall the last time you wound the mechanism, or exactly how many days have passed since the pendant first appeared. Your dreams have grown thick, and treacly days feel looped time, soft and squishy like overripe fruit. You go to the mirror and look yourself in the eye. You remember being born, don't you? The light flares behind you. You spin around just in time to see the flame inside the lens shrink, then sputter. A tiny puff of smoke curls upward, vanishing into the glass. The light is out. For a heartbeat, the world holds still. Then the wind howls not outside, but inside. You stagger back as a freezing gust blasts down the tower stairs from above. Papers scatter, the logbooks slam shut, and the mirror falls from the wall, shattering at your feet. You don't bother with shoes, you just run. Up the spiral stairs 2 steps at a time, slipping on dew-slick wood heart-hammering. At the top, the lantern housing groans. You grab the striker and relight the flame, shielding it with your hand. The wick catches. The lens spins. The light returns. And the screaming stops. You collapse beside the brass crank, breathing like you've just fought off a kraken with a broom handle. The air settles. The silence feels like victory. Temporary, but you'll take it. Historians still argue whether early lighthouse design was informed more by engineering practicality or ancient symbolism. Some old towers mimic sacred geometry spirals, pyramidal sections, even altar-like features hidden in their base. One French coastal tower was found to have a stone bowl embedded beneath its hearth, a votive offering, or just a forgotten bowl of fish stew. Opinions vary. You suddenly remember the trapdoor. You saw it once when you first arrived. A latch tucked beneath the lower storage shelf, dismissed at the time as maintenance access. But now, thinking of that bowl under the French hearth, you wonder if there's more to your own foundation than seawalls and rat skeletons. You head down, carefully avoiding the broken mirror. The shelf slides away with a groan. The trapdoor beneath is old. Iron hinges, wood warped with age. You pry it open and shine your lantern down. A narrow set of stairs spirals below. Of course it spirals. Everything spirals here. You descend. The air turns colder, damper, the scent of salt giving way to something older, earthy, metallic, and faintly sour like buried coins and forgotten prayers. At the bottom, the chamber is small and round, carved from bedrock. A single waist-high pedestal sits in the center. Upon it a bowl. Yes, like the one from the French story. But this one isn't empty. Inside is seawater still and mirror smooth. You lean in, your reflection stares back, then smiles. Again. You jerk upright. There's a sound. Behind you. You spin around. Nothing. You turn back to the bowl and the water is gone. No spill, no wetness. just an empty stone basin. You flee. Up the steps, up into the daylight or what passes for it. You close the trapdoor and drag the shelf back into place. Then you sit on the floor and laugh quietly into your hands. Not because anything is funny, but because sometimes that's all you have left. You check the light, still burning. You write in your journal, trapdoor, bowl, water vanished. My reflection smiles first. You underline that last part. Twice. The tower feels tighter now, like the walls are leaning in just a bit. You're running out of places to explore or hide. Outside, the fog has shifted. Not dissipated, just shifted. Like it's clearing a path. You step out to look. Sure enough, a single channel of clear air stretches from your lighthouse down the cliffside path and into the forest. And at the end of it, just barely visible, is a figure. Watching. Waiting. You don't wave. You don't speak. You just close the door and lock it behind you. Tomorrow you'll follow that path. Not tonight. Tonight you guard the light. You don't let it sleep. Because maybe that's all that's keeping you you. You don't sleep. You sit beside the flame with your journal in your lap and a blanket around your shoulders, trying not to blink for too long. Every creak of the floorboards, every sigh of the wind jolts your senses back into high alert. Even your own breathing starts to feel suspect, as if it might belong to someone else. The light spins steady and smooth, casting long shadows that crawl around the circular room. You watch the shadows carefully. If one ever lags behind the rest, well, you're not sure what you'll do, but it won't be good. Hours pass like sludge. At some point you notice something odd. The stars. You haven't seen them for days, thanks to the fog and storms, but now, just above the highest window of the lantern room, the sky is clear. Not entirely, just a round patch. A perfect circle of black velvet, speckled with stars like a window into a different sky. The stars themselves look wrong, too bright, too numerous, and arranged in patterns you don't recognize. You stare, squinting, tracing unfamiliar constellations with your finger. And then one of the stars moves. Not twinkles. Moves. A slow, deliberate arc across the circle of sky. You hold your breath. It stops. Then it pulses once. A bright, unmistakable blink. Like an eye. You step back, heart stuttering. Then the fog rolls back in and covers it all up, erasing the star to circle the sky. Just gray again. Historians still argue whether early mariners relied more on celestial navigation or instinct passed down through oral tradition. But a few fringe researchers suggest ancient seafarers spoke of sky holes, gaps in the clouds, or stars that weren't really stars at all, but watchers. Probably superstition. Hopefully. You descend the stairs, slowly lantern in hand. You need answers, and there's only one place left to look. The pendant. You bring it to the mirror, or rather the largest surviving shard, and set it down beside it. Then you wait. Nothing happens for a long time. But as the fog outside presses tighter, and the air in the room gets inexplicably colder, the metal begins to pulse with warmth. Tiny, rhythmic throbs. Almost a heartbeat. You lean closer. The mirror shard fogs over with your breath, and then clears to show not your reflection, but the lighthouse itself. Only different. Older. Crumbling. Covered in black growth like barnacles or bruises. And the light at the top, it's dark. A black lens where the flame should be. You reach out to touch the shard, and the image flickers, then shifts. You're looking at the ocean now, but not your coast. The water is red. Not blood red, more like rust, like it's old. The sky above is empty. No stars, no watchers, just void. The image fades, leaving you staring at your own wide, sleep-deprived eyes. You pocket the pendant again and breathe through the tension curling in your stomach. You feel something shift behind you. Just air. Right. You turn quickly. Nothing. But the door at the base of the stairs, the one leading to the outside, is open. Only a crack, but wide enough to let in the cold. You didn't open it. You cross the room slowly and push it shut. You slide the bolt across and wedge the old chair under the handle, just in case. Then, through the warped glass of the window, you see movement. A shape. The same one from before. This time, it's closer. The figure is standing at the edge of the cliffs where the grass gives way to stone. A tall silhouette, arms at its sides, utterly still, staring up at the tower. Staring at you. You consider the spyglass, then decide no. You don't want a closer look. Some details are better left vague. You return to your logbook and scribble the figure again. Closer. Watches. I think it moved the door. Then, more hesitantly, light is thinning. Like it's tired. I feel thinner, too. You underline thinner. Your stomach growls. You haven't eaten in a while. You go to the cupboard and grab hardtack and dried apples. Food that feels like chewing cardboard and hope. But it grounds you. A little. Night deepens. The light sputters again. You leap into action, checking the oil, the mechanism, the wick. All seem fine, but the flame pulses like a flickering memory. You sit with it. Speak to it. You tell the flame a story. It's an old one. About a child lost in a forest who sang to the wind so they wouldn't feel alone. You don't know why you remember it or who told it to you. But it makes the flame dance a little steadier. You keep talking, voice low and slow. You ask the light if it's tired, if it's lonely, if it's protecting something or someone. You don't get an answer, but the lens spins true. Just past midnight, the wind stops altogether. No breeze, no surf, no sound. You step outside again. The air is motionless. The figure is gone. In its place, a new triangle of stones. This one at the base of the tower steps. At the center, where the middle stone usually sits, is a key. Old iron and black with age. You pick it up. It's cold. Heavier than it should be. Back inside, you examine the baseboards again. You find a notch behind the old wood stove. A tiny keyhole you never noticed before. You slide the key in. It turns. A soft click, and the floor beneath the stove begins to groan open. Another passage. Not downward, but horizontal, leading into the cliff. You light another lantern and kneel at the edge. The passage breathes. The air is old. You whisper to no one tomorrow. Then you seal it again and lock the stove back into place. Tonight, you rest beside the light. Because tomorrow you're going inside the cliff. And whatever's waiting in there, it already knows you're coming. You wake with your cheek pressed to cold stone, the brass railing above you, casting shadows like ribs across your face. For a disorienting moment, you don't remember where or even when you are. The silence is too absolute, the kind that rings in your ears like leftover thunder. Then the lens creaks, the light spins, and your brain catches up. The hidden tunnel, the figure, the key that should not have fit anything and yet did. You sit up slowly. Your limbs ache from sleeping on the floor again, and the fire in the lantern has burned low. You refill it, careful with the oil, though you're no longer sure what you're rationing for. A few more days, a few more years. You check the sea. Flat, dull. No boats, no movement. The fog presses tight against the sky, but there's a strange clarity near the cliffs. Not clear exactly, more like a focused opacity. Like the mist wants you to see just one thing, the spot where the passage leads. You eat barely. Your appetite has slipped away with the tides. You chew because your jaw misses the motion, not because you're hungry. Historians still argue about the diet of lighthouse keepers during extended isolation. Salted meat, hardtack, dried peas, yes. But also reports of kelp bread, barnacle soup, even pickled seabird eggs. One Danish keeper allegedly trained a puffin to fetch mussels. Fringe tale. Sure, but you're not ruling anything out anymore. You make your way down, lantern in hand. The keys already in your pocket. Warm now, as if it's part of you. The stove creaks reluctantly as you drag it aside again. You lift the latch and pull open the narrow door in the floor. The passage yawns forward, dug into the very bone of the cliff. You duck in. It's tight at first, claustrophobic walls brushing your shoulders. But the path slowly widens, curving gently, descending a little. You run your hand along the damp stone wall as you walk your palm, gathering salt and something else. Something faintly metallic like old coins and rusted armor. The deeper you go, the quieter it gets. Even your breathing begins to sound muffled, as if the tunnel is swallowing your noise. Your footsteps echo faintly, but they don't bounce back quite right. It's like something is absorbing them. You come to the first door. Yes, there are doors down here. Wooden, swollen with moisture, braced in iron. This one is ajar. You nudge it open with your boot. Inside shelves, books, journals. Pages curled with age ink, faded but legible. You lift one at random. It's a log, like yours, only much, much older. Day 1. The fog did not return with the morning tide. I suspect the lens is interfering again. Day 3. The scratching in the walls has moved above ground. Day 5. I met myself on the stairs. He seemed more tired. We agreed not to speak of it. You close the journal and back away, slowly placing it exactly as you found it. You pass 2 more doors. One reveals dozens of lanterns identical to yours, stacked in careful rows like they're waiting for something. The next opens to a small sleeping alcove. The bed is made. There's a pair of boots beside it, worn, not dusty. You don't linger. The tunnel curves again. It's cooler here, but the air isn't stale. It's alive, with an electric quality like the sky before a storm. Finally, you reach the chamber. It's circular. Of course it is. Everything down here loops. In the center, a stone table. Symbols are carved into it vaguely. Nordic, though you suspect even runic scholars would frown and mutter, "This one's not in the book." On the table, another pendant, not identical to yours. This one is broken in half, the chain snapped to the metal, blackened at one edge. There's a small pile of ash beside it. You don't touch anything. On the wall opposite the entrance, someone has written a message in thick, tar-like strokes. Remember the light, not the shape. You step back, heart thudding. What shape? You turn your lantern, slowly casting long arcs of flickering illumination across the room. And then you see it. On the far wall, a faded painting, or maybe a burn mark, or maybe both. An enormous figure, crowned in flame, hands like fog, eyes made of mirrors. Your breath catches. It's not a god. It's not a monster. It's something that should not be here and yet has always been watching. And you understand, in that shivering moment, what the keepers were keeping. Not just the light, but what the light holds back. A prison, not a beacon. You back away and return to the tunnel, breath shallow. You pass the rooms again, this time without looking in. At the door to the main tower, you pause. From above, a faint sound echoes down. Not footsteps, not voices, music. A low humming song, wordless and old. You recognize the melody. It's the one from your dream, the one the light sang to you. You climb the stairs fast, pushing the door shut behind you, dragging the stove back into place, fingers trembling. You don't check the light right away. You sit, you write. The tunnel leads to something older. A prison. A pattern. The light is the lock. I think the lens is the last one left. That's why it spins. That's why it must not go out. You look at the flame, still burning, but lower now, tired, just like you. You go to the lantern room, wind the mechanism, oil the wick, speak softly to the light. You say, "Thank you," and "Sorry," and "Please stay." It flickers, then glows steady. For now. Down below, inside the cliff, the pendant still waits. But you have no plans to return. You understand now. You're not guarding the sea. You're guarding everything. The next morning doesn't come with sunrise, it comes with absence. No birds, no wind, just a slow, creeping gray that presses in on every side like a damp wool blanket. You wake in the chair again, the logbook clutched against your chest like it might run off if you let go. Your first thought is the light. Still burning. Fainter than it should be, but spinning with a slow, steady determination that feels personal now, as if it too is tired of carrying the weight but has nowhere else to set it down. You don't speak at first, not aloud. You sip water, chew dry bread. The tunnel's still locked. The stove heavy over its entrance. But your mind has gone down there 100 times already, each time a little farther, a little darker. You crack open the journal from yesterday, hoping to find a different ending. Something hopeful. You find instead a scrap tucked between the pages. A hand-drawn map. The island, the tower. A few notations in tight, almost frantic script. Do not listen to the shapes. If the mirror darkens, cover it. They watch the watchers. And then in a different ink, underlined, the light is not eternal. Charming. You tuck the map into your own logbook, not because you'll need it, but because it feels wrong to leave it behind. You make your rounds, checking the oil stores dwindling, and the cistern holding for now. Then you check the shoreline. And you freeze. There's a boat. Not a full ship, just a rowboat moored where the rocks slope shallow enough to step onto. You blink several times to make sure. It's real. Old, patched, half-covered with seaweed, but solid. Tied with a frayed rope to a rock like someone meant to return. You move toward it slowly, boots crunching the gravel. Inside a satchel. You lift it. It's heavy with books, a few preserved rations, and a small, leather-bound object that feels suspiciously like, yes, a logbook. Someone else's. You open the front. The handwriting is dense and wild. Came to relieve the keeper. Found tower empty. Light still running. No sign of struggle. No blood. Just gone. The next entry is a day later. I think it knows I'm not him. The flame is watching me now. You snap the book closed. Back in the tower, you sit by the window satchel beside you. You check the sky every few minutes. No other boats. No figures. But the fog is thick enough to hide anything that doesn't want to be seen. Historians still argue whether lighthouse shifts were ever missed entirely without explanation. Official logs say no, but oral records from coastal families mention keepers who vanished into the mist. Most chalked it up to madness or escape. But there's always that one awkward possibility that they never left at all. Just dissolved into the rhythm of the place, like you feel yourself doing now. To fight it, you begin a ritual. You name things. Every object in the tower you give a name. The kettle is Greta. The oil can is Olaf. The broom with the bent bristles is Carl. You speak to them. Say good morning. Tell them what you're planning for the day. It helps. Maybe. You take the boat's logbook and compare it to yours, page by page. Patterns emerge. You each saw the figure. You each heard the song. You both wrote about the fog breathing. The last entry in the boat log is brief. The tunnel called. I answered. He was waiting. There's a symbol drawn under it, the same as the pendant. You throw another log on the stove, not because it's cold, but because the crackling fills the space that might otherwise invite other noises. Then the mirror fogs again, this time not from your breath. It steams on its own, a slow frost blooming outward from the center like ink dropped in water. You step back, and a face appears. Yours, but not. Eyes too wide, a smile too small, like a bad sketch of your own reflection. It doesn't move, but its mouth is open, and you realize slowly with horror that it's singing. But there's no sound. The sound is behind you. You whirl around. Nothing. Then the mirror clears. You lean in, and in your own reflection you see something behind you, a blur, a flicker. You turn again. Still nothing. The mirror lies. You cover it with a cloth, a thick one, just like the note warned. You take the pendant from your neck and tie it around the cloth like a seal. Then you wedge a chair against it for good measure. One of the logs in the fire snaps loudly, and you nearly jump out of your skin. You pace. You read more from the old books. One talks about the sea glass gods creatures that see through polished surfaces. Another describes a reverse star chart used to navigate away from celestial bodies. That's probably nonsense. Probably. You check the flame again, still spinning, slower, like a tired dancer refusing to leave the stage. You whisper, I see you. Not to the flame, to whatever might be watching through it. It flickers, almost amused. Night returns without drama, just thickening gray pressing deeper into the corners of the tower. You light the backup lanterns, all of them. Let them burn. The stove glows red in the center of the room. The warmth should be comforting. But you can't help but glance at it and think under there is a door, and under that door someone once walked too far. You write in the log. Today I found the next me. He had left already, or maybe never arrived. Either way, I'm the only one here now. Still, you sign it. Just your name. Your real one, not the title. Just in case someone finds this and wonders who you were before you became a story. Outside, something brushes the window. Not a knock, a drag, like a wet sleeve across glass. You don't check it. You say aloud to no one and everyone, I'm not going down again. And the tower hums in reply. Soft, approving. For now, the flame still spins. The following day begins before the light shifts. You haven't really slept. Just drifted in and out of shallow haze on the bench beneath the spiral stairs, listening for sounds that shouldn't be there. Sometimes you swear you hear breathing, not your own, just behind the walls. Sometimes you think it's the sea sighing through the cracks like it's trying to get in. When you finally get up, the first thing you do is check the cloth over the mirror. Still in place. Still cold to the touch. You don't lift it. You don't want to see if your reflection has moved again. Instead, you climb the stairs. The lighthouse gears grind faintly overhead, their slow, patient turning like a heartbeat made of iron. The lens still turns. You give it a little extra oil check the wick. The light seems a bit brighter today, or maybe that's wishful thinking. You've started treating it like a person. Not in a silly way, in a respectful way. You're not entirely sure who's looking out for whom anymore. The fog, though, is thicker than ever. It clings to the window like breath on glass, only it doesn't warm or melt. It just sits there pale and heavy like a waiting thing. You open a narrow window just a crack, and the air that seeps in feels wrong. Not cold exactly, just off, like it forgot how to be wind. You shut it fast. Back downstairs, you unroll the old maps again, spreading them across the table. There are annotations everywhere, like a nervous cartographer had a crisis of faith halfway through. Circles drawn around seemingly random outcrops. Arrows pointing nowhere. Notes like "do not chart past this line" and "whispers strongest here." One fringe historian once theorized that certain coastal regions in Scandinavia, particularly in Denmark and western Norway, mapped themselves, meaning the more you tried to chart them, the more they shifted. His theory was laughed out of academia, but he also mysteriously vanished during a field study on the Jutland Peninsula. Some say he became part of the map. You wonder now if he maybe just took the wrong tunnel. You spend the afternoon writing. A letter this time, not a log, to someone who won't read it. Maybe the next keeper. Maybe yourself. This tower is not just built on stone. It's built on memory. Layered, folded, rewound. Like the light spinning through the same beam again and again. We aren't watching the sea. We're rewatching time. You stop. Tear the page out. Fold it once, then tuck it behind a loose board in the desk. You scratch a tiny X into the wood above it with your knife. Maybe someday someone will find it and feel a little less alone. By dusk, something strange happens. The fog recedes. Just a little. A sliver of shoreline appears. The rowboat is gone. You never heard it leave. But the tide didn't take it. There's no debris, no broken rope. Just an absence. You press your palm to the glass. Maybe it never came in the first place. Maybe you brought it. The light catches your eye again. That warm, molten beam slicing through the haze like a blade wrapped in honey. You remember the message painted in the tunnel. Remember the light, not the shape. You whisper it to yourself like a prayer. You haven't seen the shape again, not directly. But sometimes when your eyes blur, you think the shadows behind the beam curve too deliberately. You do the evening checks, the oil's low. You count the remaining tins, 3. You do the math. Enough for maybe 5 days at full burn. 7 if you stretch it. Then you hear a thud from below. Not in the tunnel, inside the tower. You pause. Wait. Nothing follows. Still, you grab the lantern and descend the steps slowly, each creaking board like a scream in a cathedral. The light plays across the stone walls, stretching your shadow long and twitchy. You reach the base. The mirror's still covered. The stove hasn't moved. But on the table, a book, not one of yours, not from the satchel. You pick it up. It smells fresh. Inside, blank pages. Except one. The very center. You're doing well. But the end is not yours. You blink. It's your handwriting. But you didn't write this. At least, not yet. Historians often reference the Danish concept of hygge cozy comfort. Candles warm, drinks thick blankets. But rarely do they mention its shadow sibling hugsa. It's an old word barely remembered, meaning a memory so deep it starts behaving like a place. You wonder which of the two you're living in. You burn the book, just to be safe. The flames catch fast, curling the page with your own message first. You watch it turn to ash and feel a little lighter, but only a little. That night the storm returns, not with rain or lightning, with sound. A low thundering groan like the earth turning in its sleep. The tower vibrates faintly, stones humming against each other like tuning forks. You rush to the light room, double-check the rotation. It's smooth, unbothered, but outside the window the fog pulses in and out like lungs. Something's moving in it, large. You can't quite see its shape, but the beam stutters when it passes like it's skimming across an invisible bulk. It doesn't look at the tower, but you know it knows you're there. You duck instinctively, and suddenly remember you left the fire downstairs unattended. You race down. The book is gone. Not burned, not there. Just missing. A trail of ash leads to the stove. You move it. The trap door is open. You slam it shut. You don't go down, not this time. Instead, you place the mirror in front of the door, still covered, but heavier now. You feel the pull even through the cloth. Then you wedge the iron poker through the handles, and wait. You sit beside the stove, the lantern near your foot, the light pulsing faintly from above. And for the first time in weeks, you close your eyes, not in sleep, but in trust. You're still the keeper, even if nothing else stays the same. You wake up to quiet, not silence, not quite, but the thick hush of fog and stone and waiting. The kind of quiet that isn't the absence of noise, but the presence of something holding its breath. You stretch cautiously, bones cracking in a slow symphony of neglected joints. The lantern is out cold. The poker still sits across the trapdoor handles, and the mirror hasn't moved. You touch the cloth. Still cool, still covered, still wrong. Outside, the air is bright in that washed-out Milky Way that doesn't feel like sunlight, but rather the memory of it. You climb to the light chamber. The gears click. The lens turns. And there on the glass is a handprint on the outside. You step closer, forehead nearly touching the pane. The print is large, larger than your own. The fingers are long, the tips slightly tapered like claws that haven't quite decided what they are yet. It wasn't there last night. You check the door, still bolted. No sign of entry. You leave it. You've learned not to wipe away the warnings. Just like the mural in the tunnel, just like the drawings in the old logbooks, you let them be. You don't want to invite more. Back downstairs, you feel the presence of the tower pressing in. Some days it feels like a shell wrapped around you. Protective, familiar. Others, like now, it feels like ribs. And you're inside them. You run inventory again. 2.5 cans of oil. 4 loaves of dried bread. Water, still good. You light the stove for warmth, but not for long. You need to ration the wood, too. It's early spring now, but here on the coast, spring is more of a rumor. In your log, you write, "The hand came last night. I think it was testing the glass. It left no message, only pressure. Maybe it wanted to remind me I'm not watching alone." Then, something you haven't done in weeks, you go outside. You don't wander far. Just a cautious step beyond the tower's base boots, squishing into sea-soft moss. The fog is thinner than usual, letting you see the shore, clearly jagged rocks slick with spray. No boat, no debris. But something has changed. There's a stone formation that wasn't there before. A circle of 7 rocks, each the size of a loaf of bread, perfectly arranged. At the center, a scallop shell balanced upside down. Beneath it, a carved shape in the dirt. The same symbol from the pendant. The same one from the tunnel wall. You crouch, not too close. The scallop twitches, only slightly. You stand and walk away, fast but not panicked. You know somehow that running would change the rules. Historians still debate how much of the superstitious behavior around lighthouses was born of genuine fear versus inherited routine. Some say keepers developed rituals to stave off loneliness, while others claim the rituals themselves invited something in. The truth, as usual, probably lies somewhere uncomfortable in between. Back inside, you go to the desk, find your knife, and carefully scratch the symbol into the logbook cover. Not for devotion, for documentation. Then, in a moment of quiet rebellion, you draw a second one beside it. Slightly altered, the lines cross differently. One arm turned inward. You don't know what it means, but you know it's yours. The fog outside churns almost in response. Night creeps in early. You light the backup lamps. The tower grows golden with flame and flickering shadow. You feel yourself soften, if only slightly. There's a rhythm to it now, a strange kind of comfort in the surreal. You find yourself talking more. Not to people, not out loud, but to the tower. You run your hand along the stone wall as you walk. You tap the windowsill twice before turning the corner. You hum to the gears upstairs. A low, silly tune about soup mostly made up on the spot. It helps. You sleep a little that night. Not deeply, but real sleep. You dream about the mirror, though. Only in the dream it doesn't reflect you. It shows the tower from outside, far above, as if you're watching it from a bird's-eye view. The beam of light cuts through fog like a knife through butter, spinning endlessly. But it's not alone. There's another light, far off, flickering. Not another lighthouse. A fire. You wake with the feeling of being seen. But not by anything inside the tower. By something waiting outside it. You check the horizon. And there it is. Faint, but real. A small amber glimmer. Southwest past the rocks. Too high to be a boat. Too low to be a star. You watch it for a long time. Historians often say lighthouse keepers were trained to resist hallucinations from isolation and sleep deprivation. But the idea of resisting is misleading. You don't resist the weirdness. You absorb it. Let it settle into your bones like fog in fabric. The next day the light is still there, unmoving. You mark it in the log fire on the horizon. Maybe another keeper. Maybe not. But I'm not the only one lighting the dark anymore. Then later, do I go to it, or wait for it to come to me? You spend the evening prepping, just in case. You pack a satchel, dried bread. Your log, a compass that doesn't always work. And the pendant. You leave the key to the tower in the journal with a note. If you've made it here, congratulations. Please keep the light spinning. You don't plan to leave, not yet, but it feels good to be ready. The fire flickers again that night. Closer. You swear it moves a little west. The fog doesn't hide it. The tower doesn't fight it. You feel like something has changed. You just don't know what side you're on yet. The fire remains on the horizon constant, as the stars above only warmer closer. You wake with it behind your eyes now, an imprint like sunburn, even when you're not looking. It's not a trick of light. It's not a dream. You know that. You've known for a while. It's calling. You pack again. This time with intention. You ration water into a tin flask, tuck a spare pair of socks inside the satchel beside a thick scrap of oiled canvas in case the fog turns wet. The compass, still twitchy, goes in, too, mostly as a gesture of politeness. You almost forget the log. Almost. Then you slide it into the satchel and run a hand over the tower wall. "I'll be back," you whisper. Or maybe you won't. You don't clarify. You take one last walk through the tower. Not to check things, just to see them. The spiral stairs you've walked up and down 100 times. The stone groove worn into the floor near the window. The covered mirror still cold. Still still. you leave it veiled. You're not ready for goodbyes with that thing. You climb to the lightroom and oil the gears. The lens hums softly, a sleepy giant still doing its job. You prop open the window just slightly, let the sea air touch your face. It smells of kelp and iron and a long-forgotten word you can't place. Then, just before you go, you light one of the smaller lamps and place it on the windowsill. A reply to the fire. A signal of your own. Historians still argue whether some lighthouses in the 17th century were meant to warn sailors from the shore or lure them to it. Several wrecks off the Danish coast remain unexplained, their logs reporting strange lights seen at impossible angles, as if the land itself had bent the beams. The tide is low. You walk along the sand, following the curve of the rocks. The fog curls at your boots but doesn't touch your face as if it respects your journey now. You pass the old circle of stones, the shell is gone. In its place, a smooth, flat pebble carved with a crescent. You don't pick it up. You nod to it like a colleague. The fire draws nearer as the coastline dips south. It flickers in rhythm now like breathing. One long inhale, one short exhale. Then you see it. Not a campfire. Not a lantern. It's a beacon, built of driftwood and whalebone crackling tall in a wide crescent alcove, sheltered by cliffs on three sides. The fire dances atop a mound of black sand, fed by something other than kindling something that smells faintly like salt and ink. And beside it a figure, wrapped in oilskin, hood drawn low, sitting cross-legged like it's been there for centuries. It doesn't move. You approach slowly. No sudden noises, no sudden doubts. The figure doesn't speak, but it nods. You sit across the fire. The heat is real. You warm your hands. For the first time in weeks, the cold behind your teeth begins to thaw. The figure finally lifts its head. You expect a face. You find a mask. White. Porcelain, maybe. Blank, save for a single black vertical line across where the right eye should be. It tilts its head slightly, then reaches into its cloak and offers you something. A mirror. Small. Palm-sized. The back etched with that same crescent you saw in the sand. You take it. You don't want to. But you do. The figure nods again, then lifts one gloved hand and points not toward the sea, not toward your lighthouse, but straight up. You follow the gesture. The stars have returned. You didn't notice before, but the sky is suddenly clear, and there directly overhead is a formation you've never seen. A tight triangle of stars, bright white and wrong. They pulse faintly, not twinkle pulse. The figure lowers its hand and stands. You do the same. Then without a word it turns and walks into the rocks behind the fire. A narrow slit between the cliff faces opens just enough to allow it through. You consider following. You don't. Instead, you sit by the fire again, and you hold the mirror up. For a moment, nothing. Then your tower, in the reflection. But not as it is, as it was. The stone is newer. The stair rails are wood instead of iron. There's a horse tied outside. You blink. The image shifts. Now it's your tower as you know it, only someone else is inside. Another keeper. Not you, not anyone you've seen before, but he looks up, right at you, like he is holding a mirror too. And then it shatters. Not the glass, the image. Fragments of light and time scatter like a dropped lantern. You drop the mirror. It lands face down in the sand. The fire flares once tall and hot, then dims. You feel something shift in your chest. Not fear, not peace, a kind of realization. You're not alone. You never were. And now, the tower isn't just yours. It's part of something bigger, something layered, layered like echoes, like light bending around time. You turn and begin the walk back. The fog greets you kindly now. The stones don't slip beneath your feet. Even the cold feels gentle. As the tower comes into view again, you see your small lamp still burning in the window. The lens above still spins, and when you step through the door, the mirror is uncovered. But instead of a reflection, you see the fire, still burning in the glass, still waiting, still watching. You don't cover the mirror this time. It doesn't feel threatening now, just present. Like a long-forgotten photograph left on the mantel, its silence somehow comforting. The fire within its glass still flickers softly, as if echoing from somewhere deeper, older, elsewhere. You let it be. The tower feels lighter today. Not physically, your knees still complain every time you take the spiral stairs, but emotionally. The weight, the pressing sense of being watched, expected, seems less sharp, like something has settled into place. You climb to the light chamber. The lens continues its steady sweep. The gears hum with a rhythm you almost mistake for music. You lean your head against the brass eyes, half closed, and for a moment it feels like you're cradled in something vast and benevolent. Maybe that's what it's always been doing. Cradling, protecting. You tend to the flame, more mindful now. There's intention in your movements, like each task. Every drop of oil, every wiped smudge of soot is part of a rite. You're not just keeping the light alive anymore. You're keeping the watch. Your watch. Historians often romanticize lighthouses as symbols of solitude, resilience, or human triumph over nature. But the truth is more complicated. Many keepers weren't heroes. They were haunted men, impoverished, punished, even forgotten. The light wasn't always a symbol. Sometimes it was a warning no one knew how to interpret. Downstairs, the journal remains open. You flip back through pages. Some are neat, practical wind directions, cloud patterns, oil levels. Others spiral into sketches, questions, half poems scrawled in midnight shorthand. You stop at one line from weeks ago. If you could talk to the sea, what would it ask? Today, you write beneath it. What do you need me to remember? You don't have the answer, but it feels like the right question. You go outside again. The air is clear today, the first truly clear day in what feels like months. The horizon glistens in a way that doesn't look natural. Almost too perfect, like it's been painted by a hand with no memory of storms. And then movement. A speck. You squint. A boat. A small two-oared skiff rising and dipping slowly in the swell. No sail. No visible figure. You watch. It doesn't approach. Just hovers at the edge of the rocks, waiting. You raise a hand in greeting. The boat stays where it is. You don't go to it. You've learned better than to chase the unusual. But still, you mark it in your log. The sea returned something today. Or someone. Or maybe it just needed to remind me it's always watching. Later, while cleaning the lantern base, you find something wedged behind the gear, casing a sliver of dark stone, etched with tiny notches like tally marks. 13. You don't remember placing it there. You don't remember anyone placing it there. But you feel no fear, just curiosity, and a slow, rising sense of time folding in on itself. Historians still argue whether early lighthouse keepers were victims of isolation-induced delusion, or if their reports strange lights, phantom vessels, clocks that ran backward were rooted in something real. Some believe the design of the towers themselves, with their spirals and reflectors and elevation, may have affected perception. Others argue maybe those towers just revealed what was already there. That night you dream again. Not of fire, but of mirrors. Dozens of them, suspended in the air, reflecting each other endlessly. Each one holds a version of you, some older, some younger, some with eyes glowing like oil lamps. One turns as if aware you're watching. It raises a hand and presses its palm to the glass. You wake just before touching it. Back to the here, back to the now. You sit in bed, wrapped in wool and silence. Then, slowly, you rise and walk to the mirror. The fire is gone from it. Instead, it shows your reflection. But this time, there's something just behind you. A soft gold shimmer like sunlight filtered through deep water. You turn. Nothing's there. But still you smile. Because somehow you're not afraid anymore. You're home. You spend the next day writing not just logs, but a letter. To whomever comes next. Whether in 10 years or 100. You fold it carefully and place it in a small glass jar sealed with wax tucked beneath a stone at the tower's base. You don't leave the tower again after that. You don't need to. The world comes to you now in dreams, in symbols, in the quiet flicker of light against glass. Your watch continues. The fog rolls in again. But this time it feels like a blanket, not a wall. And the light. The light keeps spinning. Like always. Like forever. The tower dims now, not from neglect, but from rest. The stones, warmed by firelight and softened by the sea's hush, settle into quiet. You breathe slower. The world narrows, cozy, familiar, and safe. The lens continues its patient turning above, sweeping gently through the dark like a lullaby. Even the wind has dropped to a whisper, rustling only the hem of your blanket and the corners of memory. You don't need to keep watch anymore, not tonight. The sea is calm. The stars have returned. Whatever was out there, whatever came to test the glass, to draw circles in the sand, to leave fire flickering on the horizon. It knows you now. Knows that you watched back. Let your eyes drift. Let the quiet settle into your bones. You've seen more than most, held the light through fog and shadow, and whispered back when the world asked impossible questions. You've done well. The tower holds you gently now, its spirals curling around you like a lullaby whispered in stone. There's nothing you need to do. Nothing to guard. Not tonight. Just rest. Let the waves rock the shore. Let the flame spin its slow arc. And when the morning comes, whenever that may be, know, the light will still be there, turning, turning, always turning. Good night, keeper. Good night.